and even more at stake in this Olympic year, a spot on their various Olympic teams. Hi again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer. Welcome to warm Sochi, Russia, where the temperature is now up to 52 degrees Fahrenheit. But the good news is the humidity is down to 61%, quite a bit lower humidity than last year's crazy ice conditions, or last week for that matter. Here's a closer look at this track that was built for the 2013 Winter Olympic Games. A fun track, a lot of tight turns, and a lot of uphill sections. Earlier today, they had run number 1 of the men's singles competition, and 2015 world champion Semen Pavlichenko finds himself in 3rd place and well within striking distance on his home track. The Latvian Kristus Zaparjots has an Olympic youth gold medal. He's in search of World Cup victory number 1, and they're all chasing down Italy's Dominik Fischneller on a borrowed sled. Fischneller has the lead, and with a track record to boot earlier today. There's a look not at the Joska Crystal, but at this week's first place podium trophy. Start list for run number 2. 1 will be missing from the original field of 32 as there was a crash. Everyone else will get their shot. And look at those split times on the right, especially starting on this page. About 0.2 of a second separate places 6 through 18 or so. And another story within the story is the fight for the top 15 and a chance to race in tomorrow's sprint competition. Hi again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer, pleased to bring in for the call of run number 2, Olympic bronze medalist from this very track, Erin Hamlin. Erin, welcome back.
Thanks, Tim.
We've got Marian Škupek of Slovakia, the first to go here in run number 2. Škupek had a time of 52.790 in the first heat. Big right-hand turn off of that steep start ramp for these athletes in Russia.
Yeah, over the years we've seen quite a few problems on that start ramp. It is very steep, and steep ramps can be a bit more unstable.
5 Russians in today's race, 5 Austrians, 4 Latvians, 3 from the United States, and 5 from Germany. And it's Germany's Johannes Ludwig, followed by Felix Lach and Max Langenhahn, the top 3 in the World Cup overall points. All 3 of them coming up much later here in heat number 1. .52.79, now 52.518. A quarter of a second improvement. And if nothing else, Erin, if you don't fight for the podium and not even make the sprint field, it's always nice to finish the weekend on a positive note with a better second run.
It really is, and just to put 2 runs together, that's sometimes the first big hurdle of the sport, is to be consistent and to be able to put 2 back-to-back runs together that you're happy with. Even if you have a couple mistakes still, the consistency is something that takes a long time to get. He had a few times where he got a little offline. You see he does a good job of not letting it impact him further.
That's American coach Lubo Mick on the right, but a former competitor Lubo was for Slovakia. Solid doubles competitor. Now Italy's Lukas Gufula, the first of 5 from Italy. His teammate Dominik Fischneller, as we mentioned, has the lead during the break. Gufula, 22 years old, enjoys hunting and hiking. Good start time of 4.69. Erin, is it safe to say that on some tracks the start time is more important than others, or is it always important?
I'll say it is always important. It is more impactful sometimes on some tracks than others. The shorter tracks, like an Eagles Austria, there's not a lot of track left to make up for time that you might be behind at the start.
Big problem for Gufula. Off the sled. Really struggling to get back on it. Now he'll slow down enough where he should be able to remount, and he does. That is great perseverance.
It is, and that's one thing that is really important. You still get credit for finishing a race. That does give you points if you do cross the finish line with your sled. So getting back on, while sometimes it's pretty daunting, it's crucial for your overall rank.
Unfortunate for Gufla, whose best finish so far this season was a 28th place, or 26th rather, but he will likely be 30th, 29th, 30th today.
And he hit that corner a little bit too early, and it just, when that happens, it just flips you right over. You really don't have a chance. Luckily, it was a little higher up right into entrance of curve 10, so he had a little bit of few meters left to still make it across that line.
Gufla in second place, and here's Vali Cretu, 32 years old, from Syrnia, Romania. When not luging, he likes to spend time with his family, although he's quick to tell me he still trains every day, which of course is key to athletic excellence. Aaron, in fact, Valentin said there is not a single day that he doesn't think about luge at some point. And that's safe to say it's true with all of you, isn't it?
It is, but I also think it is healthy to kind of give your brain a break. It's easy to burn out in a sport that most athletes have to travel most of the year to compete in. So when so much of your time and energy and emotions are put into something, I think it can be healthy to turn it off for a hot second.
Cretu did not make the field in the opening race in Yangjing. He finished just off after the Nations Cup, but followed up with a 25th place finish last week in Sochi. He'll be down in the lower 20s likely today, but for the moment, he's in the lead in the early going in run number 2.
A little bit offline there. You see, ideally you want your sled to stay parallel with those walls. And so anytime that it gets off, you're either going to hit the wall or you'll have to drive pretty significantly to prevent it from happening.
Vali's been working the camera pretty well this season. Andre Manzi, the first of the 2 Ukrainians, thanks so much for waking up and joining us worldwide live streaming on Olympic Channel. And if you're just waking up in time for run number 2 of the men's singles, keep in mind we've been up for over 5 hours. Doubles competition earlier today. It was a great event, captured by the Russians, Bogdanov and Prokhorov. And now it's run number 2 of men's singles. Good smooth paddles, smooth settle for Andre Manzi.
Really late there. I was going to say, I'm curious to see how that follows him, but he did a good job of correcting.
Great look at the mountains in the background. We're about 60 miles up the mountain pass from downtown Sochi. Always gorgeous. It was warm and sunny throughout most of the Olympics. Manzi from Kremenets, Ukraine, 33 years old, across the finish, 22 hundredths of a second behind that man, Valentin Cretu. The masks still very much part of the protocol. Around the world, the athletes are allowed to go maskless basically only from seconds before they start until seconds after they finish the run.
And after a few offline spots like that one at the top, Manzi put a really good bottom of the track together. So I think he kind of stopped the time bleeding. But yeah, any of those mistakes at the top, it's really hard to come back from because the speeds are still pretty slow.
Today's competition here in Sochi is of course a World Cup, but it doubles as the American Pacific championships. Each year, the International Luge Federation holds a European Championships and a Pan-Pacific Championship. And because there were no races in Whistler or Lake Placid, as was scheduled last week and this week, they are holding it here in Sochi. Reed Watts, the first to go for the North Americans. Johnny Gustafson of the USA is the first run leader in these championships. Watts is from Whistler, and don't think last week didn't sting a little bit for an event that was supposed to be on his home track. Second year in a row, the North American events were scrapped and moved to Europe due to the ongoing pandemic. Problems for Watts.
Big problem, and he almost saved it there at the end of 15, but the exit just caught him quick. He should be able to maybe jump back on.
Slowing himself down quite a bit, though, just trying to get onto that sled. At some point, Aaron, does the athlete make the decision it's not worth it?
In my opinion, I think it's always worth it to try and get back on. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to hit a spot where you're not going to make it to the finish line, maybe, I would always try to get back on. It doesn't feel good to slide on ice at 80 miles an hour. And right here, I thought he was maybe going to keep his weight going the right direction, but it just flips him.
Unfortunate. Reed, the lone Canadian men's singles competitor right now in the World Cup, can't get out of Russia quickly enough. After a 16th place in China, he's come back with 22nd and now probably 31st. Or a DNF is really what it is.
Yeah, I was going to say it'll be a DNF.
Josef Ninnis now up for Slovakia. His brother-in-law is a 5-time Olympian in cross-country skiing. Ninnis, a 4-time Olympian. I believe the only 4-time Olympian in the men's field now. We've got the Sheiks brothers, who are 4-time Olympians for the doubles. That's a lot of stamina to compete for 4 and now likely 5 Olympics. You were, Aaron, you were 3 or 4? You were 4, right?
I was 4, yep.
And you had it. You were done.
I mean, physically, I definitely could have kept competing, but I was ready for a new chapter, for sure.
Which is what makes Armin Zugler that much more remarkable, is the fact that he's not only a 6-time Olympian, he's a medalist in each of those 6 Olympics. Well, as you see Reed Watts being helped up the outrun, it's Ninnis crossing that finish line. 144.148 for the 2 runs as he takes over the early lead over Valley Cretu.
And Ninnis just put together a really great run. I know we've said it before. We always kind of expect him to have those textbook lines, and he definitely showed that right here. Really nice position as well. Stretches out in the entrance of corner 6, I believe that is. And then really smooth off of that corner 10 or 11, sorry. That's really what you want to see, is smooth off of and onto corners, because those are spots when, I'll let him have his moment with the camera, but those are spots where you can cut ice really easily because your direction is changing with the corners. So if you can be really smooth, you're just gaining momentum as you go down the track.
It's been a great run for David Gleicher. 2018 Olympic gold. 2019 he got married. 2020 his son Nolan was born. How will 2021 end? Really has not been good for Gleicher here in Sochi with a crash at the World Championships, a crash yesterday in seated training, and nearly crashing out of the race earlier today in run number 1. David says the key to the deep Austrian success in the men's program is the fact that they help one another. That becomes a little more difficult, at least emotionally, in an Olympic year, but still that's a great tribute. Oh, and he continues his issues here in Sochi.
The bottom of this track does not get along with David Gleicher. He had a little bit of a bump and offline going into curve 14, but I thought he had corrected it. Then it just got a bit away from him. There's a big dip out of 14 into 15, and if you have to make any corrections, you get a little bit of that zero gravity that we talked about in Beijing, and yeah, it just caught him. Right here, you see he was going to be going late into 15, which you don't want to do, but it's like he overcorrected and pointed his sled too much into 15, and then that abrupt entrance just flipped him right over.
Incredible. He's had some moments here in Russia. He finished 6th last week. He had the track record from run 1 of those World Championships, but there are just some parts of some tracks that haunt luge athletes.
Yeah, Segulda and I had a rough go for a while, but I learned to like it.
Take a look at the athlete, but also take a good look at the sled under the athlete, because that sled, Aaron, is currently in the lead in this competition. Please explain.
Yeah, that's such an interesting detail about this race. So obviously we've talked about it a bit already, but for those that are just tuning in, there is a handful of sleds that did not make it to Sochi for these 2 weeks. And so a number of athletes, including Dominic Fischnaller, who is leading, has had to borrow sleds or trade off and on and share with other athletes. And so they are actually sharing a sled for this race.
Leon Felderer was the very first to go in run number 1, as they purposely spread out his and his teammate Fischnaller's runs to allow the sled to be set up for each athlete. He's got a pretty good advantage right now over Ninnis in the early going. 21-year-old military athlete from Lats Fons. Leon's main hobby is hiking, and he definitely lives in the right place to do that, in the gorgeous Dolomites, home of Himalayan giant Reinhard Messner.
He came really close to making the same mistake Gleicher did, but managed to keep the right side down.
Nicely done down at the bottom, of 51.762 for Felderer. That's roughly a quarter of a second better than his first heat. He moves out into the lead. And let's see who we've got following up here. We've got a German only 0.02 of a second up, and then a Latvian only 0.04 of a second up, then an American about 0.02 of a second up. So this could hold for a while. This will be fun to say. As Aaron and I have been mentioning, the splits are very tight. A lot of jockeying for position. Right now, hoping to get into the top 15. Here's Chris Iceland. Heading home next weekend, the World Cup in Altenburg in the Saxony region.
His first run, the whole thing was just a little bit off. He didn't look comfortable, so I'm interested to see if he can kind of relax and just let it fly this run.
Imagine, if you will, getting a hole-in-one on the very first hole you play ever in golf and then never matching that. Well, Eisler was a winner in his very first World Cup race. Not sure he's been on the podium since. Maybe one other podium, certainly no victories in the 7 years.
Definitely set the bar pretty high for himself.
Falls behind the Italian by 0.14. Nice exit here. The 28-year-old from Chemnitz crosses almost exactly a quarter of a second back, but in second place.
He does fall back, but like we were saying, it is a tight race, and this one looked a lot better than the first run. So I think he'll be happy to get home next week, but also to leave at least on a solid run.
Big, tall athlete, one of the tallest in the field.
Really smooth at the bottom in these spots that some of these men are having a lot of issues.
22nd place after run number 1 is Latvian Arturs Darznieks from Sigulda. 14th place in last year's World Cup standings, including 2 fourth-place finishes, one on his home track, the other in St. Moritz. We will be at both of those tracks in January. Artur's best result so far this season was an 11th on the Olympic track in China. Did you catch a glimpse of that coach in curve 5?
I didn't again.
Okay, we'll have to check that out when the next Latvian comes down.
I did see a photographer there as well. So I wonder if maybe it's doubling.
Double duty. Snap the picture, direct the athlete. Keeping it close, we haven't seen 1600 made up at the bottom of the track, but we have seen it cut into. This will be interesting to see. The sled set up for Latvia. He loses another 800ths. It's Felderer continuing to lead the way. He's got all of his equipment on. You know they've ushered his sled all the way back to the top already.
And the bottom looked good for Archers. You know, it's hard to say. Maybe just didn't gain enough of that speed down the track to push him through those bottom portions. Pretty good line out of 11 and into 14. This is a spot that's like your last big push into an uphill. And then that last curve, he looks a little bit frustrated there.
Action has already unfolded here in run number 2 in Sochi. Leon Felderer of Italy leads the way, but here's the first of 3 Americans, Chris Masder, whom earlier today qualified for tomorrow's sprint competition thanks to a 13th place finish in doubles with teammate Jason Turdeman. Masder currently the only athlete regularly competing in both singles and doubles at the World Cup level.
I think that goes to show the tall task that it is, that not many people have ever done it and no others currently doing it.
Since his Olympic silver medal in 2018, Chris has gotten married, he's had a baby, he's competed in Dancing with the Stars. Most recently, he's broken his foot, and he's still on the mend from that.
Yeah, he's very familiar with a very hectic schedule.
He thrives on it.
Absolutely.
Keeping it close, 800ths of a second behind the Italian.
Skid there.
Little skid.
Yep, sorry to jump in. He had a little bit of a skid, kept it under control, but I think it lost any chance he had to reel him in further.
Unfortunate as he falls back one spot, really does not have much of a chance to make it into the sprint, sitting currently, all things being equal, in 22nd position. Lots can happen. He waves goodbye to Russia. He will compete in the sprint tomorrow. He called run number 1 a weird run when he got off the sled. And this was not much better.
Yeah, right there you see it, the sled drifted. It's really hard to tell, but you can see him almost dropping his feet. It just lose your grip a little bit and it feels unstable. That can turn into a much bigger disaster, but it killed any momentum he had going at the bottom of the track.
Moritz Bollmann, number 5, currently on the German depth chart. Grabbing the handles. A 2-time junior world champion. He's been active in the sport out of Oberhof since 2011, joined the senior tour 2 years ago. He has to do a slight correction there to stay down the center of the ramp. It's incredible, the athletes keeping that sled down the center when you're paddling, no grooves. It's rounded steels, isn't that correct? Or it's sort of edgy.
Yeah, there's a bit of an edge on only a portion of it. So the runners are probably about, I don't know, They vary, but anywhere from 2.5 to 3 feet long, but only about a foot of them is actually in contact with the ice because there's a bit of a bow to them. So really, there's not a whole lot keeping you stable at that start.
Keeping it close. Can the German make up 700s down at the bottom? They are one of the few nations that can find time down at the bottom this week and last week, but they don't do it here. He falls back 2 positions behind Italy and USA. Germany in 3rd place, still in the early going in Sochi. Hey, this is a good early sign, Aaron, for Dominic Fischnaller. The fact that his sled, or the sled he'll be using, is holding on to the top spot at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully some of that speed is left in there for Dominic, but no, I think it's good to show it, but also you get that early ice as well. I know we've talked about that a decent amount. And no major problems here either, so I think maybe just not relaxed enough, not confident in his sliding here enough, but we'll see how the ice holds up too.
Now the next of the Latvians, Riks Rozītis, who says his motivation in this sport comes from the people who believe in him and who support and help him, which is a great testament. And the motivation isn't just wins and medals, but it is support. And he has an issue here right at the start.
He does, and he really saved himself really great. He didn't pretty much hit that wall, probably just caught the profile of the ice on the corner, so it prevented it from pushing him into the other wall, which would have been an absolute disaster. But someone who already doesn't have a very strong start and needs all the time he can get at the top, and that is really going to set him back.
A start deficiency can multiply sometimes 4, 5, 6 times on the way down. Our longtime colleague John Morgan likes to say you can't make up time. You can only hope not to lose more time on your way down the track. I don't know if that's literally true as much in luge, but you're not going to do yourself any favors with early problems.
No, and he had a few more mistakes, so he just set himself back from the start.
Only a shake of the head from the Latvians. Still a couple of his teammates set to go, including Kristers Apariots of Latvia, who's in 2nd place after run number 1.
Yeah, it looks like he must have slipped on a paddle. When your hands don't hit exactly in sync, then it just instantly pushes you to go crooked, whichever way your sled's going to go, and it's really, really difficult to come back from that. I'm very familiar with start mistakes. It's pretty devastating because then you have to go down your whole run knowing that you don't have a chance.
Now it's Anton Dukash, and everything is relative in the sport of luge. Anton is not going to challenge for the medals, but Aaron, as you were mentioning, there's a lot you're liking about what you're seeing from Dukash so far this season.
Yeah, he's a strong starter. His technique looks very good. You see him tracking straight down the ramp, which is what you want, and he just looks great on a sled. He has a good position on the sled. You don't see him moving around much. His lines, he drives great lines. From a small program like the Ukraine, it's always great to see athletes come on that just, you can see have that really, really good natural ability and natural skill.
26 years old. He had 2 top 20s last year on the World Cup, both exactly 20th place. But he opened up this season with a 16th place finish in Yongjing.
Really nice at the bottom.
Crossing with a time of 51.897, and the run continues for Leon Felderer of Italy, leading the way over Dukash and American Chris Masder as we near the halfway point here in run number 2.
And again, he has a really great run. You see a bit of a wave in that corner, but that's a spot on this track that you actually want a little bit of what we call a loop. It just sets you up really well for curve 11. A little bit of offline there. You don't want to have to go that close to Slider's left wall. He had to do a lot of work to bring it back, but showed a lot of skill in dealing with what he had and not panicking. And the bottom looked great.
Alexander Gorbatsevich has that number 32, symbolizing that he was the last man to come down in run number 1. And that is significant because we felt that the ice was slowing down a bit, especially at the end. Nothing compared to last week's crazy racing. But let's see what he can do starting much earlier here in the second run for the Russian.
Looking really nice so far. Everything's been pretty spot on. When it looks effortless, it means it should be fast.
27 years old from the city of St. Petersburg. He has been consistent, not spectacular, the last 2 seasons. Virtually every one of his results between 5th and 15th place. So that is consistent. Nice lines. This should be the lead.
Yeah, he's picked up quite a bit of time.
Terrific run, 51.715. That is roughly 0.2 of a second faster than his first heat. It's a time that would have put him in 8th place in run number 1. So as projected, the earlier start time certainly works for him.
Yeah, and that's something that's always a little bit frustrating when you can look at your runs and if they're comparable, and the biggest difference is when you went in the start order. You know, it always bums you out, but you know, this time he did have a little bit of a mistake there, so I imagine he'll be thinking of a lot of, you know, what could have been.
Russia out in front. And here is the next of the Austrians, Rainer Eger. He opened the season with a very impressive 5th place showing on the track outside of Beijing. And Austria is in the exact same position it was 4 years ago, with 5 challenging for 3 Olympic spots. And that competition certainly paid off for Austria at those Olympics with gold in men's singles, silver in doubles, and bronze in the team relay. It's such a deep program right now.
It really is, and when you have, you know, any of the disciplines finding success and you just have that kind of momentum going on your team, it can feed everyone.
Eger coming all the way back over the past few years from back injuries, making the Olympic team in 2018, winning some World Cup races over the past quadrennial. Going to be hard pressed to make up that 1/10 of a second on the Russian here. Second place right now, 3rd fastest run of the individual heat. It's Russia leading over Austria and Italy, with the next American coming up after an Italian.
And all I can say is maybe he was just overdriving a bit, working too hard to get clean lines, because there were no major errors. Maybe a little bit of skidding there, but nothing that terrible. So I think he must have just been a little bit off. Oftentimes you watch a run and it looks really great. The lines are fantastic, but they're working really hard to get them, which slows you down.
Kevin Fischneller of Italy, a 1-time World Cup winner and the defending overall World Cup champion in the sprint discipline. That was not expected, but it was so solid a performance by him in this other race last year. However, Aaron, here with the first sprint weekend looking our way tomorrow, he sits on the bubble. Kevin's in 15th place after run number 1.
Yeah, and he's always a strong contender in that race, so I think he'll be really bummed out to miss out on it. So I'm looking for him to really lay one down right here.
All you need to see for Fischneller and the sliders to follow is green down at the bottom. That will guarantee them a spot in tomorrow's BMW Sprint. But Fischneller moves into the red.
He's known to pick up time at the bottom, though, so we'll see if he can pull it back in.
His cousin Dominic has the lead after run number 1. Fischnaller only 300ths back. This will be very close around the finish curve.
I think he'll get it. Oh, no.
Just falling back, second place. Now that does not eliminate him from the sprint competition tomorrow, but in order to be in the top 15, he will need some help from some of the sleds to come. Tucker West of the U.S. coming up next.
Yeah, and this is the week, though, that if you're right on that bubble, you still have a pretty good chance because the racing is so tight. He's only 6,000ths of a second. He only had 6,000ths back from the next athlete. So I think there's still a good chance. He put down a pretty good run, really solid position. Right here on the exit of 15, you'll see he was a little bit off. Not as bad as I thought, actually. So maybe that just killed just about enough momentum that he needed.
Run number 2 continuing from the Sochi Sliding Center, just outside of the city of Sochi, Russia, far southwestern portion of this gigantic country. This is the second of 3 Americans. Tucker West, only 6,000ths of a second up on Kevin Fischnaller. A little more to work on Gorbatsevich of Russia, who has the current lead. And Tucker is eyeing a spot, though, in the top 15. He'll need to be in the top 2 here, Aaron, if he wants to make the sprint competition tomorrow.
Yeah, I know he'll be pretty devastated if he doesn't make that just for the overall season. He's always really hard on himself when he, doesn't have a result he expects. But so far looking really good. Good lines at the top.
In his own words, he has called the last 4 years the weirdest quad, with the pandemic, with greater expectations on his shoulders after World Cup victories. Now, the athlete from Ridgefield, Connecticut moves into the red, still within 1/10 of a second. Again, a top 2 gets him into the sprint, but he's in 3rd place. For the moment, I do believe that does earn him a spot. No, just outside. So he'll need at least one of the final athletes to fall behind him if he wants to have a second race tomorrow.
And he definitely looks frustrated there. I didn't see any major mistakes, but again, sometimes these athletes just are working too hard. If their lines are spot on, there's always what I like to say being on the edge of out of control, where you want to be in control so you're not crashing, but you don't want to be over driving the sled. You want to let the sled go and work with the track as much as possible. Did look like a pretty solid run from Tucker, though, so I can understand his frustration.
Austria's Nico Gleicher holds about 500ths of a second advantage over the current leader down below, Alexander Gorbatsevich. It would be a nice story to see Nico make the Olympic team this year. He was the odd man out, the one that did not get the call in 2018 and stayed at home and watched his brother win Olympic gold. In fact, not only did Nico make the trip, but his parents couldn't even watch their son win Olympic gold because David Gleicher was named to the team so late. It would be a nice story to see Nico make this Olympic team. Since those Olympics, he has won one World Cup race.
Yeah, he's shown a lot of speed, and I think it's definitely in the blood.
That's so true. So many siblings, so many families and offsprings that compete in this sport.
He's looking really nice. If he can just keep it smooth on these bottom corners, I'd be shocked if he fell out of the lead.
The 2021 World Sprint Champion crosses with a nice run of 51.645, knocks the Russian out of the leaderboard, and knocks himself into tomorrow's sprint event.
I'm not surprised at all he opened that up. He had just really smooth sliding all the way down and really nailed the bottom of the track. So he did a great job of building that momentum and then keeping things smooth.
relieved and soon to be headed back to Germany and Austria for the next 2 weeks. Here's Felix Locke, 12th place for the two-time Olympic champion. That's after run number 1, but in each of the past 2 weeks, Locke has come back big time in run number 2 to earn podium positions. His 48 career World Cup wins is second only in men's singles to the legendary Armin Zugler's 57. Aaron, Locke just 32 years old, which is not that old. I mean, he started winning these Olympic and world titles when he was a teenager. But you got to wonder how much he has left in him, because while he's in great shape and still sliding well, the pressure of being the best and the most well-known in Germany has got to be incredible.
It definitely is, and like we've talked about, they have a really deep program, so you have to be on your game every run, basically down the track. That can definitely take a toll.
Well, for the third week in a row, Locke makes a huge statement in run number 2. It's almost as if he's toying with the field. He moved from 15th to 2nd last week. He started this heat in 12th place and nails a track record, which is not a common event in run number 2 anywhere, any weather.
It's not. One thing to make note of, though, is when the weather is a bit warmer, that means that the runner temp is going to be warmer. It stopped once you get past 0. It's not controlled anymore after that. So they're actually, sometimes you see the fastest times when the humidity isn't so high, but the temperature is high, because you get a lot of that melt between your runner and the ice, and it makes for some faster speeds.
Felix Locke of Germany leading the way, and from the two-time Olympic champion, we move on to the two-time world champion, Roman Repilov of Russia. Took a little extra peek there after the settle. Aaron, to your point with the temperature, what's fun in San Moritz, where the World Cup finale and European Championships will be held, on that natural track, they say sometimes as it gets warmer and sunny on the track ironically gets faster.
Yeah, in Salt Lake City, the track there for the games there, up in Park City, it is similar. I think it just gets that top layer of ice gets a little bit warm, like it is a fresh spritz, because that's more water instead of ice, which is faster, less friction.
Several foot taps to correct himself for Repilov, the two-time world junior champion, two-time world champion from Dimitrov in the center part of this nation. A distant second behind Felix Locke.
Definitely looked a little bit off there. And I'm going to correct myself. I said they're not controlled after that. I did not mean that the steels are not controlled after 0. They never have to be lower than 0. So when temperatures are warm, that control temp of the steel is higher. So I had to right myself there.
I was wondering about that, but I just figured I didn't know enough about it to question.
No, I just mixed up my words a bit. More mistakes from Roman than I anticipated seeing. It's a common spot to have problems, but it looked like he could have corrected a little bit more, but just sometimes you feel like you can make it work, and then it just doesn't allow you to do that.
The Russian through with an American coming up next. Action continuing now from Sochi. Tim Singer along with Olympic bronze medalist Aaron Hamlin. This is the final American, Johnny Gustafson. He was one of the first to go in run number 1 and held on to the top spot for quite a while. And now the young athlete from Messina, New York, settles onto the sled. It's a sled which is not his, Aaron.
Yeah, I am impressed. He put down a really good run. You saw him pretty excited about it after that first run, and I can see why. To look this comfortable and to have solid sliding on a sled that's not yours is really impressive.
The reason Johnny and several athletes had to borrow sleds is because a lot of athletes' equipment, not just sleds, but helmets and other gear, were left behind in China, never cleared customs. Update, they're hoping to get them Monday morning when they arrive in Germany. Gustafson trailing Felix Locke, and trailing by quite a bit right now.
No major mistakes. He has been offline a little bit, but doing a great job of correcting.
Falling back 5 spots just ahead of Tucker West. The good news for Gustafson is he has made it into the sprint on the bubble right now. He'll race tomorrow. He also, by virtue of this run, is the 2021-22 Pan-Pacific, American Pacific champion, the race within the race at the World Cup amongst the North Americans and Asians.
Had a little rough transition there, but did a really good job of keeping his composure and not just dropping his feet. He wanted to right there. You see his feet get really low. He might have actually put them down, but kept it together and corrected quick enough, and the bottom looked great.
Gustafson safely now into the sprint competition tomorrow. His teammate Tucker West is on the bubble on the outside looking in and will continue to need help. And as we move along for Tucker, that might mean a crash, because with each successive athlete, the gap is bigger, the advantage over West. Here's Jens Bergens, the defending Olympic gold medalist at the most recent Olympics, which is kind of a trick statement because the most recent Olympics were the Youth Olympics held in 2020 in Switzerland, where Bergens captured gold over Pavel Rapilov.
I did see the coach that time.
There was talk, if you're just joining us, that there's a Latvian coach situated at Curve 5 directing the athletes, doing a little live coaching, which is allowed in some sports, but not in others. And we don't know with Luge.
I think it's fine. I mean, you could really have anyone there. I know in training, coaches use it a lot. If you can make it work on the fly like that, it's impressive. So,
well, he falls back 2 spots. It makes you wonder, maybe the luger should have an earpiece in, and the coach is talking them all the way down. Lean a little to the right, lean to the left, straighten out.
Not sure that would be as successful. I think just being able to react to something you see quickly is probably a better chance than having to listen and process and react.
Not to mention how unnerving it would be.
Okay, pretty solid run. There was nothing major I saw wrong. I think just the, inexperience on the World Cup and just still new to the game here on the senior tour is probably just showing a little bit, but really great performance, I would say.
We expect great things from Bergens in the years to come, as well as from the man who finished just behind him at those Youth Olympic Games, Pavel Rapilov, who bettered his world championship brother in run number 1, perhaps by having the more advantageous start order. We'll see how it plays out here in the second and final heat. Pavel, 19 years old. Made his World Cup debut last season, an abbreviated schedule where he ended up 29th in the season-ending points.
So far looking really nice. One of the smoothest tops of the track I've seen.
Two-tenths of a second back, and his feet do come down in that straightaway. How costly will that be? His speed is 86.3 miles an hour across the finish line, dropping 4 positions. And Felix Locke has clearly learned how to spend time in that leader zone, because Aaron, this is the 3rd week in a row he's making a big run number 2 move.
Yeah, and I know I said it earlier, Olympic years, you always see some big jumping around and maybe some inconsistencies with times from Felix. I think equipment maybe can play a big part in that when you're trying to dial in exactly what's going to be your fastest setup for the Olympics. So I wouldn't be surprised if that continues all the way until a race or 2 ahead of the games.
Sure, and if Felix is anything like his coach and mentor and idol, George Hackl, then he is, to some degree, experimenting right up until the Olympic Games. And like Hackl, maybe throwing a surprise or two everyone's way at the Olympic Games. Now it's Max Langenhahn, off to a terrific season. 3rd in China, 4th last week here in Russia, currently number 3 in the World Cup points. Germany has sliding sports legends in Lange and Langen, and another Langenhahn, Andy, and now Max.
Had to make a bit of a correction there. It threw him off a little bit into curve 6. Recovered really well though.
He's 3rd on Germany's depth chart at the moment, but a very clear 3rd, well out ahead of number 4 and 5 in his effort to get one of those coveted German Olympic spots. Dead heat to the 1,000th of a second. Now
imagine this will keep going the other way.
Yeah, that's just how the trend normally does, but you sort of hold your breath because there has been some unpredictability. So Hackl watches on. It's as if our producer heard us from 4,000 miles away. And Langenhahn has 2nd place behind Locke. They currently sit 2nd and 3rd in the World Cup points.
Did a great job there of not panicking and dropping his feet. He did have a lot of direction towards that right wall. But like I said, recovered really great. He just kept losing time going down the track. It just shows how solid of a run Felix had.
Felix Locke of Germany continues to hang on to the lead down at the bottom, but up at the top of this track at the Sochi Sliding Center, we have 2 Austrians in a row, 6th and 5th place after run number 1. Jonas Mueller on deck, but here's Wolfi Kindl. And the drama and the jockeying, Aaron, continue because it was the 2 Gleiches and Reinhard Eger who appeared to be in the driver's seat for the 3 Olympic spots, but it's Mueller and Kindl with the best results so far this week.
Yeah, leave it to the Austrians to make it another exciting Olympic qualification process. But like we've talked about, it shows their depth, and that is exciting. And I think if that continues on, expect good things from them at the games again.
Kindl is a 3-time Olympian, top 10 in each of those games. He also captured the 2017 World Championship on his home track in Innsbruck, Austria, where we'll be in 2 weeks.
And having a very Kindl-esque run right now. He's driving really great lines. I imagine finding some good speed, but just barely holds on.
Great job. He's been coming back steadily. You know, we mentioned in run number 1 that Wolfie's been experimenting a lot with material and equipment. He also has had some back problems, but it seems like he may be saving the best for when it matters in this Olympic year.
And you can see he's really excited. This was just an all-around really good run. Maybe a little bit of a rough transition there, but nothing he couldn't handle. He's really good at letting the sled run, and that just helps, you know, let the sled track down the ice as you want it to, and not create any more friction than you have to.
It's the 45th season on the Eberspescher Luge World Cup, stop number 3, the 2nd weekend in a row here in Sochi, Russia. This is a transplanted race originally scheduled for Lake Placid, New York. The pandemic has kept the tour in Europe. Now we have Jonas Mueller, who surprised a lot of people 2 years ago with a pair of World Cup victories in the season opener on his home track in Innsbruck, and then backed it up with a World Championship that same season in the sprint competition in Winterberg.
Yeah, he really blasted onto the scene that year, and it was really impressive. And oh, that was not so impressive, but the recovery was.
It was one knock, then a big skid. how much time will he lose?
Quite a bit. There's a bit of a flat spot in the top portion right where he had those problems in this track. Might have actually been in one of the slight uphills. And when you do that at the top there, you lose so much speed.
4/10 back, and he will maybe fall out of the sprint. He's got to stay in the top 15 ahead of Tucker West. And he does, just by one spot, just by 0.003 of a second. Jonas Mueller stays ahead of Tucker West and into the top 15, so he will get a run tomorrow in the sprint where he captured the world championship. But he needed that track to run out right where it did.
And that was that tricky spot where we've seen that Latvian coach, curve 5, it can get you. It's, to me, probably one of the more challenging spots on the track. See Peter Pence, his coach up there, feeling the frustration. Making a mistake at the top of the track, right along with at the start, is one of the worst things because you're killing any of that momentum as you just try and build it into the rest of the run.
Kindle leaving over a pair of Germans with the final 4 remaining. Johannes Ludwig, without question, the standout athlete on the entire FIL World Cup circuit this season. 2 races, 2 victories. And you mentioned, Aaron, such a likable guy, mild-mannered, who waited in the wings for so long, just missing out on the 2010 and 2014 Olympics before making the 2018 squad, and then winning Olympic bronze.
Yeah, talk about persistence and perseverance, just sticking with it and not getting discouraged after missing out so many times. And really just collecting all that experience and having it build into these past couple of seasons and this year. And it's really showing that poise and the skill that he's just developed over the years.
And he's showing it again right here, opening up his lead on Wolfgang Kindl, now nearly a quarter of a second. And the question gets asked, not will he take over the lead, but can he hang on to it and put pressure on the final 3? A track record, 51.379 for the 35-year-old athlete from Oberhof.
That was impressive, and it was a beautiful run. You saw Kindl take his hat off to him. I think that's the only thing you can do at that point.
What a season it has been so far for Johannes Ludwig.
Yeah, there's not much to say. Like, he just put down such a smooth and solid run. You know, it goes to show all those years of maybe missing out on those big races. You know, you have time to just dial in your sliding, just taking runs, using different setups and learning what's fast, what runs and what conditions. So he clearly gained as much as he could from all of that time, and it's paying off big time right now.
And then there were 3. Ludwig, who is undefeated so far this season, has the lead. He'll be followed by 3 athletes, none of whom have been on the podium yet this season, but all of whom are decorated and capable of it. First up, the 2015 world champion on his home track here, Zeman Pavlichenko. Besides his world championship, Pavlichenko is a 4-time European champion. That's in part because the European Championships often have been held either here in Russia or in Latvia, 2 tracks he loves. Can he find the time, Aaron?
I don't think so. I think Ludwig put down too solid of a run and continued to gain time at the bottom. Well, Pavlichenko wasn't having any major issues. I just feel like it's not going in his favor. It's not running like it normally does for him.
With 2 remaining, he crosses the finish line in 2nd place. So on the outside looking in right now, Ludwig has captured the podium for the 3rd week in a row and will likely hang on to his spot atop the World Cup standings. In fact, he's clinched that at least for now. 2 remain. Apariods of Latvia and Fischnaller of Italy.
He still had that solid Pavlichenko position where he just buries his head, but you know, I wonder if he didn't feel the pressure a bit, home ice, being in a position to kind of get in the lead spot, and did a little bit too much controlling. I know he's always one to ride on the edge and maybe just kept it reeled in a little bit too much this time.
Johannes Ludwig of Germany has the lead as this World Cup in Sochi winds down to the final two competitors. 2016 Youth Olympic gold medalist Kristers Apariods of Latvia. In his first two races, he has a 23rd place finish and a 5th place finish. And Aaron Hamlin, that's somewhat emblematic of his last several seasons. Great run, followed by a crash or a near crash.
I'm holding my breath a bit for Apariods right now. It'd be great to see him start putting some runs together, and I know he's probably antsy to have some consistent results as well, but the speed is there, so I think that's promising too. He's still a relatively young athlete on tour. I still have high hopes for his overall career, but I think he has a good opportunity right now. He's still close to that lead.
He comes from a Luge family. Apariods has one podium in his career. He missed a good chunk of last season with an injury, the entire second half. This is very tight, just 0.02 of a second.
And the time's going the right way for him. He has a really nice bottom of the track.
Outstanding, a podium position for Latvia and Kristers Apariods. And for the first time this season, Johannes Ludwig will not be the World Cup winner. He still has a spot on the podium, however, but Kristers Apariods has done it, Aaron. 2 good runs in a row.
Yeah, good for him. You know, he's shown that speed. He definitely knows how to gain time at the bottom. So when I saw the time going the right way for him, I had a feeling it was going to happen if he didn't make any mistakes. That's the one detail. Really great driving. Just really able to lay back and let the sled run.
Latvia leading over Germany, and let's set the stage for our final competitor of the day. Italy's Dominic Fischnaller. He finished 6th at the 2014 Olympics here in Russia. Since then, he has won 6 World Cup races. He finished just off the podium, a heartbreaking 4th at the Olympics in 2018. He now hits the course on his sled, but it's not his sled, Aaron.
Yeah, and to be in this position on a borrowed sled after the 2 weeks that they've had is so impressive. It just shows the skill that he has and the composure to be able to just put that out of his mind and just throw down some really solid sliding.
I was speaking with his partner, Emily Sweeney, in between runs, and Emily mentioned it's not just a borrowed sled, but a borrowed helmet, all sorts of borrowed equipment. This would be an incredible story.
It really would. Having the comfort to do well in a race, nonetheless be in contention to win without your own stuff, it's mind-boggling.
4 podiums last year, but no victories for the Italian. Fischnaller has fallen for the moment behind Kristers Apariods, and he ends up in 3rd place. So it's 3rd for Fischnaller, 2nd for Ludwig, and for the first time ever, Kristers Apariods sits on the top of a World Cup podium. He becomes the 16th active man in this sport right now to have a World Cup victory.
That's a really crazy stat, but shows how wide open, not wide open, but pretty wide this field is. You know, so many men are really competitive for that top spot. Dominic put a great run together. You know, no major issues. Not as solid as his first. I think his first looked a little bit better, but still, I mean, props to him. Really smooth, as usual for Dominic. Doing this on a borrowed sled, that's crazy.
Great stories all around. And with Apariods, what you can look at it 2 ways, Aaron. What's incredible is we check out the standings first. He leads the way. A victory for Latvia. It's been a while since Latvia has been on top of a men's singles World Cup race, so that's a great pivotal moment. Top 15 make it into the sprint tomorrow, as you see Tucker West misses out by 0.03 of a second. And a look at the rest of the finishers in today's competition. Aaron, as I was mentioning, you could look at this 2 ways. 16 different active men have won World Cup races, and on a very neutral track in China, that bodes well for no way of predicting the winner. On the other hand, 2 weeks ago, we both saw what Johannes Ludwig did on that track. He blew the field away. So
he did.
I'm not quite sure how to project medals for this year's Olympics.
Yeah, if there's a favorite, it's definitely Johannes. But again, that track is so unpredictable, and there's so little experience for all of these athletes. We know these three are both great contenders. Obviously, Johannes is a favorite, but Apriodes is really starting to show that maybe that consistency is coming at a perfect time. I'm really happy for him to put two together and get on top of that podium. He did great today.
World Cup standings up to the minute, with the sprint competition still ahead tomorrow for all of these men, or at least the top 15. Ludwig opens up his lead. Felix Loch and Max Langenhahn separate themselves from the rest of the Germans in the bid for the 3 Olympic spots. Fischnaller moves up considerably into the top 6. And a look at all of these, it's a long season, 9 events as they make their way to Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Latvia over the next 6 weeks. Well, Aaron, a busy first day of action, and you'll be back here for the sprint. That's a discipline you know well and where you've won a world championship. The first sprint of the year coming up.
Yeah, it's always an exciting race. It wasn't always my favorite, even though I was pretty successful at it, but it's still great to have that another racing opportunity for athletes on a weekend.
Well, our congratulations to all of the competitors. Again, all of those who made it down safely, all of the dozens and dozens of athletes who withstood a long road trip of 3 weeks in China, 2 weeks in Russia. For many of them, they're headed near their homes over the next few weeks. For others, the long slog continues as they work their way towards the holiday break and the eventual Olympics in February. Congratulations to Kristers Apriodes of Latvia, the winner of World Cup number 3 here in Sochi. For Aaron Hamlin and our entire broadcast crew, thanks so much for joining us.